September 5th. Thank you all for being here. We'll do a roll call. Peter Gaffner, interested, is absent. Paul?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Green?
Here.
Commissioner Conklin?
Here.
So, Commissioner Budge? Here. Commissioner Scott?
Present.
Commissioner Crowe? Here. And my understanding is that our liaison, our city council liaison, Frank Davis, is out of town.
Correct.
Okay. And just so the public's aware, and so commission members are aware, Mr. Ward is here, our building inspector, as well as Mr. Esparza, our liaison, and our city attorney is here as well, should you have questions. We'd like to inform the public that, and applicants that all items on the DRB agenda will require a building permit or a sign permit. That design review board approval does not necessarily reflect the views and policies of the State Historic Preservation Office, also known as SHPO, which controls decisions impacting tax status of designated contributing historic properties. Please review SHPO's policies and, if necessary, contact them directly before making exterior changes to your property. Okay, I see we've got some folks signed up for a call to the public. This is for residents of the city of Bisbee who may speak to issues regarding design review board topics that are not on the agenda. If you want to speak to an item that's on the agenda tonight, you'll have an opportunity to do that when that agenda item does come up, and we will let members of the public know that they can then come up over here to share what it is they want to share about that agenda item. So I see we've got 4 members signed up. I'm going to just call them in order. And if you would, come up over here, state your name and address. Please be aware that the city of Bisbee does work on a 3-minute time limit for call to the public. So if you have something more extensive, you may want to seek us out separately, particularly seek out Mr. Esparza after the meeting, or the city or county with your concerns. The first person I see listed is Brian A. Laird. Is Mr. Laird here?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could come right up over here.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The other 3 people on that list are with me, and I'm going to speak for all of them. I'm an attorney licensed in the state of Arizona. There's an agenda item later that I also have signed up to speak to, but I want to speak now about what happened prior to that item, okay? There's a prior application for a DRB permit, which was granted to Mr. Sky. I think the first thing is that Mr. Sky, as to what I'm going to talk about and what comes later, should be recused, and I want to get that out there before we start. What happened here, though, was that Mr. Sky came before this board and sought an application for a remodel. And in his application for his remodel, he stated that he was going to build to the south an addition onto an existing home. This is a small home. It's right at the top of the hill, right at the edge of the hill. Everybody can see it. It's just above the Circle K. What Mr. Sky then did, however, was not to do a remodel. Apparently, he went out there and he and Mr. Ward determined that conditions were not appropriate to do a remodel. Well, in order to proceed at that point, what Mr. Sky was required to do was come back before this board and get a demolition permit. And he did not do that. And the city inspector cannot grant a demolition permit under the zoning code without this board first approving it. And that didn't happen. And Mr. Sky went out there and he just tore the building down. The important thing about that is that in order to grant a demolition permit, you have to give additional public notice. My family owns a home. We've owned a home for 22 years, 17F Laundry Hill. We're about 60 feet from the new structure that Mr. Sky's building. In order to grant a demolition permit, you have to first give notice to everybody who's within 300 feet. Because Mr. Sky did not apply for a demolition permit, Nobody received notice that he was going to demolish this building. He just went out there and tore it down. In addition to that, before Mr. Sky could then build a new home under the zoning code, he's required to obtain an approval from the design review board for new construction. This is a single-family residence area. It's zoned R1. There are up on the hill a lot of small to medium-ish houses. There is nothing anything like what Mr. Sky's building up there on that hillside. Under the design review guidelines, if you're going to tear down an existing structure, and under the Secretary of the Interior's directions, you are required to build using the same kinds of material, the same appearance as the existing structure, which was an old building that had been there for a long time. Mr. Sky didn't do that. He's not doing that now. He's building a building which looks nothing like what was there. It's in violation of the design guidelines.
Mr. Chairman, it's past the 3 minutes. I'm not sure if you want to extend time or not.
So maybe, Mr. Lev, just to be respectful of the audience and the process, if you could maybe close up for what you were speaking to, it's not on tonight's
I'm happy
agenda.
to do that and then come back.
And you may have an opportunity to speak later to his application if that's relevant too.
That's fine. The only thing I want to add is that in addition to everything I've said, he's building a 2-unit apartment. It's not a single-family residence. And again, it does not follow what's required by the design guidelines or what the DRB is charged by law with applying in the case. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak to items not on tonight's agenda? Going once, going twice? Okay, the talk to the public is completed. Thank you. Okay, first item on the agenda, selection of chairman and vice chairman of the design review board. Fellow commission members, you may not know this, but you've been presenting me for almost 2 years now. Chair and vice chair need to be re-elected. We've actually tabled this for several meetings because we didn't have a sufficient number of commission members present. So although we have a packed agenda tonight, we do need to get this resolved. So we're going to open this up to nominations. I had shared with Mr. Esparza previously that I'm not going to continue to renew my role as chair. So if you're thinking of nominating me, not that I think was that great, then I'm thinking, of course. But in case you were, after 2 years, I think I'm thinking for great. Also, my appointment expires in 5 months, so I kind of like to see someone else move in, take on the role, continue on with the DRB. So it's nominations for both chair, and I don't know about vice chair. Mr. Crowe, you served as vice chair for the last 2 years that I've been serving as chair. So just letting people know who the current chair and vice chair are, and I'm not sure if you're open to being nominated again or not.
Take on the vice chair.
Okay. Oops, my apologies. There we go. Thank you. So, any takers? Don't all jump up at once.
I'd like to nominate Tim Budge.
Mr. Budge, would you consider a nomination? I know you've served on the DRB before and as chair before.
Sure.
Okay, so you accept your nomination.
Is this for president or vice president?
It's for the chair.
Chair.
We don't want to get to president, vice president.
Yeah. Close enough, close enough.
We had enough of this agenda for tonight. So is there anyone else?
I'd also like to submit my nomination for Mr. Budge.
Okay, so that's 2 nominations for Mr. Budge. Any other nominations? Okay, then I'd say let's take a vote on it. For Mr. Budge serving as chair of the DRB, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Budge, congratulations. So you want to... Okay, now for vice chair?
I'll nominate John Coe for vice chair.
Okay, Mr. Crowe, longstanding member. Okay. Are there any other nominations for vice chair?
I'll second that nomination.
Thank you, Commissioner Budge. Okay, all those in favor of Mr. Crowe serving as vice chair, continuing in his role?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None? Okay. There, we got our first item on the agenda done.
You're a free man.
Well, I got 5 more months on that. Okay. So I'm gonna I say we do the switcheroo, Commissioner Budge, if you're agreeable, unless you want me to move this down or just take it out, what's your preference?
No, I'm fine where I am. Okay. Bear with me, because this is not something I had on my radar to chair this meeting tonight, but I will do my best, so I'll need speaker request forms. So we shall move forward to item number 2 on the agenda. Item number 2 is VRB application 1824, which are modifications to Bisbee residence 429D Laundry Hill. The applicant is seeking approval for modification of window placement due to interior wall change, proposed exterior staircase to the north side, and reduced building setbacks on the north and east side. Applicant is John Sky. You have the floor, Mr. Sky.
Thank you, guys. My name is John Scott. I'm the owner of 429D Laundry Hill. I'm basically just going in for a revision of the window placement. Due to the interior wall change that occurred, we just had to fit them in where we had them, and I want to put picture windows in and change from the double hungs. I have ran around Laundry Hill. There's 4 houses that have picture windows on them up on that street, my immediate neighbors. So it's not out of the spectrum of what's up there already. And then I want, because of, I thought that I was going to be able to do the staircase all on the east side. Yeah, on the east side, but that didn't end up working out. I thought I was going to be able to procure some property that I wasn't able to get. So now I need to put a staircase in the back on the north side. And then I had to run the deck along the side of the west side. As you can see in the drawings that were, the plans that were put together. And I still will be putting some double homes, just not as many as I thought.
So where are the double homes?
On the north side. And you can see them, they're drawn in. And then all the picture windows, I will cover up to the window with the trim. So pretty much all you're going to see is just the glass, the trim and then the glass. And they're all wood, they all have wood
Is there a reason you couldn't use double hung windows rather than picture windows?
To tell you the truth, I got a great deal on a lot of double pane, tempered glass, picture windows. The double hungs would have cost me a lot more. They wouldn't have been nearly as nice. So I went that direction in hopes that I'd be able to get them approved, obviously. And, okay, so in going back to the aesthetics, what I'm gonna do is I'm using the same siding to frame, just the darker pieces. So that's where you're gonna get your variance in the color, because it won't be painted. The siding will be coated in a clear coat. It's a creosote remediation product. It goes on clear, so you still see the wood grain, and it'll keep that same old miner's barn siding look. And that will be around all the windows.
Any questions from the board?
I got a couple of questions.
Sure.
Just on the windows alone. Are you putting sills?
Window
You
sills
can put a window sill down at the bottom,
on the outside?
on the outside? Yeah.
No.
It looks a lot better if you do that. That's just one point. Secondly, there's plenty of houses around this town that have picture windows, but chances are those were all put in before the DRB was ever established. And at this point, I don't think we ever have approved a picture window since I've been on this board.
Actually, the house right up that was built in, I'm not sure, do you guys remember the house that Hosey did recently up there? That has brand new picture window in there. And then, I don't know, maybe people slapped them in on their own, but there's a lot of them up there on the hill.
Is that up at Laundry Hill? You're saying?
Yes, and I actually sent emails to Paul. I got them a little late. I could show you on my phone. There's a lot of them up there.
As I say, most of that, generally speaking, unless it's in the back or something, it's pretty obscure.
Well, I guess we can just keep moving on, but I have a plan B. Oh, there you go. And then there's actually quite a few more. Those ones are hard to get to. I can't, walk on people's property, but.
Those are the ones that came in, so.
Oh, okay. And then there's the
Can
really
you go back,
big.
can you leave it on that one?
The really big ones are up on the hill, the one that Alan Hosey did, actually the house that I modeled my house after, so.
I went on that side, and the side that goes down over has a large picture window on the lower floor and one on the upper floor. I was on DRB when that was approved, but it's the same situation. I guess my question, John, is on both sides of these picture windows on the west and the east, there's the long, tall, narrow ones. Those are the same ones that you showed us before.
Yes.
So what you're looking at is basically 2 picture windows on the east side and 3 on the west side that we could consider pictures because they're long and narrow. And then you have one large one also on the north side.
Yes.
Look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different windows.
And then, and my picture window on the north side is facing the elderly lady's picture window facing, so they're facing together. And they're both big picture windows. There's one on her front deck, and then there's one on the back of my house.
What side again? I'm sorry.
The north, when you're on the north side where the staircase is going to be.
Oh,
So the other ones are going to be double hung windows, all of them.
except for the long narrow ones, which we approved on.
Yes. And the front won't change at all. I'm keeping that. I want to keep that real historic look for, the Tombstone Canyon view. So that one I didn't change at all.
Chair.
Sure.
It's particularly the north side window, John, that concerns me, that large square window, although I hear what you're saying about some windows that may have gone in as picture windows in that area or other parts of Old Bisbee. I think I agree with John that I think more of those are probably done with that approval or done prior to the design review board actually existing. I'm not sure what Mr. Hosey's building and what got paid quite a ways back, but I think it's the north side window that concerns me the most. The others almost look louver-like because of their length. But this large square window that you're gonna see when you get up to the top of Laundry Hill, that's the one I think, honestly, I'd rather see as a double hung window than one large square window.
Well, and the other thing that I could do with it is I can break it up. I can build into the window to make it appear to be more windows, or I could even make it look like 2 double hung windows, because there's plenty of room by putting wood stripping in there and basically just, recreating the window. So I could still use the window, but it will appear, it won't be one big window, it'll look like, 2 windows.
Kind of like what I've seen people do false dividers. like
Yes.
That they put over the window.
Exactly. And which I'm willing to do with all of them, and that was what I kind of was back and forth about. And you will not be able to tell the difference from, wherever you be looking, because it's so far.
Mhm.
But I'd really rather not, because then it, then you have obstructions in your window. But I mean, again, I would leave that up to you guys if you guys felt like that had to happen.
Okay, any more questions from the council? From the board? We have some people signed up to speak to this, so we do that, and we may bring you back for some more questions.
Right.
So if you just take a seat, that'd be great. First on the list is Helen. Is she here? Would you like to speak?
May I cede my time to Mr. Laird? And he spoke to a general question, not to this specific. When he speaks to the specific question, then I'd like to speak to it. He has not spoken to this particular.
Yes, correct. I just, if you would like to speak, you have
I'd like
to.
him to speak first, please.
Before you do?
Yes, please.
Okay, how about Janet East?
I think she would
I'd
go
also like
first.
to see one time.
Okay, and finally David?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, are you allowing them to cede their time so he has 9 minutes?
Excuse me?
Are you allowing him to speak for 9 minutes? I just wanted to set the clock.
Yeah, it's on the agenda item, so you can ask questions and we can respond to those. What I don't want to see is complete overgoing from the same people, the same thing. We ask not for repetition, so.
Okay, well, there are a couple things that haven't been addressed here at all. And one of them is that Mr. Sky is asking to have you waive setbacks. And I want to make clear that the reason that he has setback issues, and he's asking to have 6 feet at the north side, which is the Laundry Hill side, instead of the 10 feet that's required. The only reason that he's short of land on the north side is that rather than building to the south, as he was approved to do, he built his building to the north. He added 17 feet to the north, past where the original home was. And when he did that, he put himself within approximately 6 feet of the north boundary of his property.
Okay.
He's also, in this application, seeking to have decks. The deck on the east side goes all the way to the edge of his property. Under the zoning code, he has to be 2 feet back from his property. And he's not meeting the code for either of those. With this elevation that we're looking at right here, what Mr. Scott originally said was he's going to have a single-family residence up here.
Sir, what we can only address is what's in front of us right
Well-
now. So let me just finish.
Yes, sir.
Setbacks are in front of us right now, and we can address those. Windows are in front of us right now. We can't go back and reiterate things that aren't zoning issues and stuff like that are not part of our purview, plus it's not before us. So by the open meeting law, only things we can address on this application is what is in front of us. If you can only maintain to what those 3 items that he's asking for, then that's what I'd like you to do.
I understand and I appreciate it.
Okay.
So if you look at this elevation, He's asking for a change, a modification to his plan to add a staircase. The original plan did not have any staircase from this side. If I could have the west elevation up next. So, the west elevation, what he's seeking to do here is not simply add windows over there, but to add a door, all right? So he's gonna have that staircase go up to the second floor, and then he's gonna have the walkway go across, and he's gonna have the entry to his second unit, the top unit, to this 2-unit apartment on that walkway up there, okay? That hasn't been addressed. He didn't specify that in the permit, but that's what this design is calling for. And if we can get the the east elevation. So the east elevation, that's the other side, and there's a door on that side. So he's going to have an entryway to the downstairs. And I understand I'm out of time.
No, you go ahead. The 3 minutes is mainly for call the public. I allow people longer time when you're addressing
Appreciate it.
the 3 items.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
And, I don't think it's the design review board. We don't decide on setbacks.
Yeah, we do. As the DRB, we make findings of fact of like and similar,
I mean, we could, but it isn't originally a zoning issue?
no, it's entirely under the DRB overlay that's over the top of the zoning. We can set setbacks to 0 if that's how we finding of fact.
Well, there's this notice to decks, which can only come up to 2 feet from the property line, and he's got the decks going all the way to the property line.
Well, what we deal with is actual setbacks of the building. We don't have any other, what we do is have findings of fact that we're, in Old Bisbee, because houses are built so close and right on the property lines,
Understand?
almost always we make a finding of fact if there's other homes that are built in the same similar area. Okay.
I agree, and I understand that. And the last point I want to make is that you can only grant that waiver to the setback requirement if you find that there's no adverse impact to the neighboring properties. I've submitted exhibits along with the letter that I sent to you today that show how close Mr. Sky is building next to the Humphreys' existing home. Again, if he had built to the south, as he got a permit to do, and which he violated.
That's not in front of us right now.
Well, if he had done that, then there would not be this issue with the setbacks. He can't get the waiver.
Well, excuse me, sir, but actually when he came before us and I listened to the tape, he actually spoke adding, and I think we were all on the same, that he was going north with his addition. I don't know exactly what the application is, I don't have it in front of me, but.
I have a copy and I'll show you the
No,
page on which he says south to Tombstone Canyon.
You mean on the application itself?
In his original application.
Yes, and then it came back before us.
Page 5.
Just so you know, this came before us twice. First it came before us and it wasn't publicly noticed correctly. So we gave him the opportunity to go ahead and do some tear down and exploration of what was going on. Then he came back with another set of plans. That's when we had the big meeting. We talked about setbacks, we talked about the addition to the north. All that was on tape, it was approved, and that's what it was. There was not a finding of fact at setbacks at that time, which was a mistake. So we may have to go back and address that at this meeting, but it was addressed at that time that the addition was going to be to the north.
Was his application for a addition to the south in that at the second meeting it was
Yes.
changed to the north?
No, it was to the north. Second edition, the second application was,
Was that the written application?
no, when he came and presented it to us.
Was there a second written application? I've only seen one application that was the original one.
Correct. The original one came before us and we tabled it because there had not been a proper notice. When he came back, he redesigned it. We asked him to come back with better plans and show us exactly size and shape and location. And that's when we approved the 7 or 18-foot addition to the north.
Had there been a second written application stating that the addition was going to be to the north before that meeting that you're describing?
I don't remember as far as written, but it was presented to us at that time and presented in a area that was to scale.
Well, I've shown the public records, and everything that I've gotten and everything I've seen shows that there's only one permit, the original permit, which was saying it was going to build to the south.
I understand that. Many times people come back to us several times, just like this one's before us again for another revision on what we approved. If you go back and listen to the original tape, you will hear the addition going to the north, and that's what I believe, I know I voted for. But right now, I shouldn't even be going here because this is not before us. What is before us is setbacks, and if one of
And you
us,
agree with me that you cannot,
I'm not agreeing to anything. What I'm saying is, right now, that's not up for discussion, so I'm not going to.
okay, as to the setbacks though, you agree with me that you cannot grant the waiver without finding specific facts that there's no adverse impact to neighboring properties, correct?
Under the DRB regulations, there is no mention of adverse. What it mentions is areas of like and same. That's the overlay of the Bisbee Historic District overlay. Rules. I can read those to you. I have them here if you like.
In order to grant a waiver, it's required that the board finds as fact, specific facts, that no neighboring property will be adversely affected by the setback. And in this case,
Could you refer to me the code that says that?
I will. I have my code book here, and as soon as I'm done talking, I'll sit back down. If you don't mind, I'll find that for you.
Okay. Do you have anything else for us?
That's all I've got for you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Are the rest of us allowed to speak now? Or
Okay.
is he taking our time?
No, you now have your, try not to be repetitive, but absolutely, you have 3 minutes, ma'am. And state your name and general location of where you live.
I'm Helen Ingram. I live at 17F Laundry Hill. We have owned that property since 1992. That property looked approximately like the torn down property of John Skies when we moved there. We've put a great deal of money into that. I came to the design review board, and I respect you all very much, twice. One to build a garage, the second time was to build an addition. In both cases, we were required to do double hung windows, tiny double hung windows. You're asking now for an exception, one of which is going to look right down on our porch. I object to that. I find that very objectionable. Further, I'm a political scientist, and I taught at the University of Arizona for more than 20 years. I had an endowed chair at Irvine, then we moved back to Bisbee. During that period of time, perhaps I educated some people. I believe in accountability. And it seems to me, when you got rules, you should be held accountable for applying those rules similarly to everyone. And I feel that we have been treated differently by the Design Review Board. I understand that membership changes. I think a change of the membership has been to put a developer who plans many houses, this is not the first one or the last one, he plans many houses, and to sit on this board is not reasonable transparency or accountability. He may not vote on this, but he's a colleague of yours. You treat him like a colleague, you treat him differently than you treat other people, differently than you treat Brian, and that is not due process or fairness, in my opinion. Now, as for the way in which that stairway goes, the only way people can get up that stairway from the Circle K is to go through our property. I've been good enough to pave it, to say I want everybody to walk on it. And that's what we did. That was never public property, and you can check on that. We have made that for the convenience of our neighbors. To then insist on inconveniencing everyone on Laundry Hill by additional traffic and additional people, I don't see an alternative but to close that way so there'll be no way to get down to the Circle K and no way but to put a big chain in front of my garage so nobody can back into my home. I think this is unfair and not equal treatment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I provide you with that code?
I have it right here now under setbacks. It's the last statement. As I read it, I stand corrected. There is a adverse impact.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next on the speaker list is Janet Easton.
Can I cede my time to Mr. Laird?
We're not conceding time. If you'd like to speak, you can. He's had his time.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. And is there, let's see, I think that's, does anyone else want to speak? to
David
this?
Laird. Oh, never mind. Okay.
Oh, David Lair's here also, okay?
No, he doesn't.
Oh. Brian? Anybody else want to speak to this agenda item? Yes. Okay. Thank you. So back to us. Before us is the windows, apparently the setbacks, and I will stand corrected. I'll read this to you so that we're all on the same page, that in those areas in which there is established front or rear setbacks for the existing developed properties within the same or adjacent blocks that are greater than or less than 10 feet, design reboard may increase or decrease the front and rear setback for new structures as necessary to maintain the uniform characteristics of the particular street frontage. So that's number 2. Number 3, renovations and repairs and additions to existing single-family residence structures and accessory structures shall not reduce the existing setbacks less than what is required for a new residential structure, so it refers to number 2, or to less than currently exists, whatever the lesser distance, unless the design review board makes a specific finding that this construction will be consistent with the uniform characteristics, same as number 2, if any of the adjacent properties, and that such reductions will not adversely impact adjacent properties. That's number 3 on R 5.3.2, special provisions of the historic district overlay zone. Open for discussion from board members. Maybe we should deal with these one at a time. First would be, let's talk about windows. Anybody have questions for John, or what would you like to suggest?
I'd like to suggest that at least the northern window be modified so it gives the appearance of a double hung window.
So it'd be a double gang, double hung.
Correct.
2 of them put together?
Yes.
Anyone else? We agree to that? Seems like a very reasonable request. That's a very prominent window from the area of the seen by the street, from the street.
You give the illusion of a double hung window.
Okay.
Just a multi-pane window.
I think it's a good compromise, Steve.
Okay, number 2, there is a staircase on the north side. It was on the east side, obviously due to setbacks and different situations. We'd like to move it. He's continued the upper porch all the way to the west and then produced a staircase. Anybody have comments on that part of this?
There was some mention of doors earlier in the discussion. It's not clear to me where the doors are in these drawings that the staircase leads to.
East and west.
Yeah.
elevation. I believe this is a door.
John, could you come up and address that for us, please?
And we'll go back to the past on John Sky, the applicant. We did talk about the pre-existing house had doors on either side, you remember, on the east and the west side, and we went back and forth about that in the last meeting. So now there's still doors on the east and the west side. That, in between those two windows, is a door.
So what kind of door is it?
It's like an old classic looking door with I think it's got like 10 panes or something like that.
Or 9.
Well, whatever.
So similar to what's in the front then?
Yes, it's pretty much exact. They're all the same.
So they have lights.
Yes. Much like many of the doors all over Bisbee, that's same. And all these are all repurposed windows, repurposed doors. None of them are new. The only new windows are going to be the double hungs.
Could you move to the east side, because I am confused on the east side. You have, that's a door in the middle of the two windows?
Yeah, actually, there's a door there
Paul, could you put your cursor?
in the center of those two windows.
Yeah, those are doors, not windows.
Yeah, and that, I covered that. There's a doorway there, and then I slimmed it down so I could put a window there, but I don't even know if I want a window there, so I've actually
Well, what we
not.
need tonight is we need to know what your intentions are, and we can approve that. We can't go with maybe or not.
Okay, well, so I suppose I would ask to put a window there that would be the same as these windows here. All these windows here.
Upper floor and bottom, or just upper floor?
Just the upper. And then that doorway I will use as a doorway. The bottom will be used as a doorway, the up there will just be a long window, like the rest of these ones. So it'll all be uniform except for that window. There'll be a door below that.
On the east side, the upper level, there'll be 3 windows over the porch area. And on the bottom, there'll be 1 picture window and a door, and then another long, narrow window. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get that on. And so then back on the west side, there'll be doors on both upper and lower?
No, there will only be a door on the upper.
So a door would be on the upper between to the left of that picture window on the right.
Yes, in between the 2 center windows there. That's the door. And then the main access to the house is on the front, on the south side, on both floors. And the reason I kept the door on either side is obviously for fire safety, and there was already pre-existing doors on the east and west, and on our last meeting, we went through it and decided that those doors needed to stay. So
That was when the original house was staying.
yeah,
So
well,
it's kind of a good point after that.
I tried. It ended up costing me a lot more money.
Okay, anybody else? I have one other question, John. If you bring up the north side, if you would, the drawing. If you see there's a covered porch that's going over where the staircase comes up, and we agreed at the first meeting, the west side will not have a covered porch. So I need to know if that's a change you want to make, or if that goes away.
It's not important to me I think if we go back to the original meeting, I went around town and I took a lot of pictures of every house that had double porches, and they mostly had covers. So I never wanted a covered porch. It's just extra time, money, work, etc. But I put them on to,
Right.
because I thought you guys would like it.
Well, we did, and we approved one on the north and on the east, but we said nothing on the west.
Yes,
So-
which I thought would look weird, but
Okay,
you know.
so now with this new drawing, I want to make sure where we are, that we're all in the same, and I think Mr. Crow was the one that brought up the idea of not having a porch on the west, because it was only going to go back part way. So I need to know now your intentions, and then we'll chime in on, would you rather not have the porch again on the east side, and then transfer it over to the west, so we only have porches on one side? That's what we agreed to originally, only, since we swapped the stairwells.
Well, I mean, I'd rather not put them on there at all,
Well,
any of them.
well, okay, well, you have to tell us what you want, and then we'll go from there, John.
I'm fine with keeping the covered porch on the east side, and I mean, I really, if I'm gonna put them on there, I'd like to ask to put them on all three sides. But that was not a popular thing then. I don't know if maybe there's a change of heart somewhere in that.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. Mr. Crowe, I think we agreed that
It was my thought, if you take off one side, it just
didn't look like big weeds standing
It
there.
just makes the building look smaller and fit in more with the.
Did you have a chance to look around at all the places that had the double decks to notice the roof patterns that go on in the historic district since our last meeting?
But I'm just looking at, the scale of this house compared to what's around.
If I remember from listening to the tape that we had, what we discussed was, I encouraged the porch on the east side because that was
Yes.
the entrance, and I thought it would be nice to have a door over, or a cover over the door as you enter.
Well, let's just keep it the same.
Okay.
Let's just keep it the same.
Well, there's
so
only
we
a
don't-
door on the east side anymore. so-
Like I said, I'll build it any way you guys want.
I understand, I'm just trying to say, if you wanted to, we could go ahead and let the porch switch to the west side, leave the covering off the east side. It's up.
No, I'd rather just keep it the same since it's already been agreed
Okay,
upon. And that's the easiest thing for
So on this
everyone.
north view, the covered porch will not be what?
Yes.
Okay, that's on the part of the, all right, that's 2 out of the 3. The last one, of course, is the setbacks. You hear from the commission how they feel on the setbacks. What I see on the,
Well, let me speak on this right quick. The reason being that when I went up, we talked a lot about what's going on with the setbacks on Laundry Hill. The reason why I felt just in putting setbacks a little closer and stuff is because it is small up there, and just about every single house up there is built on or beyond property lines and or really close. Even the Laird's property, they've got 7 feet in between their garage and and the neighbor's house. And I figure if you split the property line, that leaves about 3 feet setback. There's no firewalls on that place.
Property lines are measured.
So anyways, and then there's another property line that they just put a new addition on the other side, on the back of their house. I went and measured that, that's 4 feet. My closest property line is 4.5 feet. So just off of that, I think that's fair. There's actually a lot closer property lines. Let's see, and then on the side, Mr. Laird is mistaken because the property line goes past the wall 5 feet. So there actually is a setback of 5 feet from the property line, but it's actually it's 10 feet to the house from the property line.
on what side?
On the, let me double check just so I don't get.
This is the
East side?
And the south side, north side thing was my error, and I apologize to all of you.
Which side does your property line extend?
The east side.
East side?
No, the west side, I'm sorry, west side, for sure. The west side is 10 feet from the edge of the house to the property line.
And that was surveyed?
Yes. Everything's been surveyed up there, numerous times.
Reputable surveyor?
Yes. Steve Sample did all the surveys from Alta. The pins are still in the ground.
There's documentation? There's
Oh yeah,
documentation.
it's all recorded. My property is recorded. The Humphreys property is recorded. The Smith's property is recorded. So all the pins are in the ground. Actually, Janet's property is also recorded. She just recently bought the property from the Humphreys, so they were pretty good about keeping their property lines.
So what we have here, correct me if I'm wrong, and please chime in, the board. There's not a problem on the south or the west. We've got 19 feet and 10 feet, so that meets the code. What we do have is on the east side, we have 4'6".
Yes.
That should be 5.
Yes.
And on the north side, we have 6'3", and it should be 10.
And then let me just throw in there that there's 14 feet in between the houses, and the Humphreys actually built their wall over my property line on that side.
That's not part of what we...
Well, I get that, but what I'm just saying is there's a big easement in between the houses. It's not like the houses are very close.
Okay, thanks. So, Ms. Board members, looks like we have 2 findings of fact that we want to. East side being 6 inches less than the code, and to the north, which is basically the street side, we've got about 4 feet, a little less than 4 feet.
And just to clarify, for the north side, was there originally an aspiration or thought that that's where you were going to be buying additional land? So there
Yes,
was
I've
a
actually-
setback issue?
Okay, if we go back to it, I had to do property deals with Rodney Smith because his property line actually went through the existing house. So I worked really hard. I tried to work with all the neighbors to clean up all the property lines. So me and Mr. Smith, I don't know if you got the email from him. He is working, now he's the only one. The only property line problems that's going on is between me and the Humphreys, which that's a civil matter, and that'll be going to court, and it really doesn't have anything to do with what's going on here, because it's an adverse possession situation. But Rodney Smith is willing to grant me whatever property I need to make sure that my setbacks are there to help me there. I'm in the process of buying a city parking space that will give me an extra 22 feet away from the house, which will really extend that. So there'll only be a few pieces that need to be verified, or that you'll have to find finding the facts. And we can do. I was thinking that maybe we could do that after I get some things rounded up and I deal with this parking lot
It's
issue.
in front of us right now, so we're going to deal with it.
Okay.
And then,
Sounds good.
okay. Comments?
I just want to make sure, because I'm still not clear.
Okay.
So in terms of the north side, which is currently a 6.3 foot setback,
Yes.
the land that abuts that is Mr. Smith's?
Smith's and city property, and then there is the Humphreys parking space there.
On the north side?
Yes.
But that's going to be to the northeast? Yes.
Yes.
Right here.
The square up, and there won't be any structures there, so. And then I want to add too that on the piece where I'm under the 5 feet, there is a firewall, and I've already bought all the sheetrock. The firewall sheetrock is going to go inside the house and on the walls, and I've done a lot of extra stuff to make sure that it's up to code in that way. So,
Thanks for the clarification.
yes, sir.
More questions? I've been up there several times, looking at trying to look at setbacks and gauging between homes. I do notice there's a garage that's right on the edge of the street. There's no setback there. My feeling on this is the 6'3", which should be 10. There's probably, in my estimation, nothing that you would consider to be adversely impacted on the neighbors because it just faces the street. There's no other houses anywhere close that, in that direction. There is a parking place, but that wouldn't adversely affect the parking place. So the one that would be up for me, the most consideration would be on the east, which is the 4'6", and requirements being 5 feet. So it's 6 inches. So that's kind of the way I'm reading it. Anybody else have any comments?
I agree.
I don't see, we find findings of fact constantly in most of Old Bisbee of close houses. It seems 6 inches is, you know, and as far as the building codes and what fire resistance and all that is all looked up to our building inspection department, and they'll make sure you meet those codes. I have confidence in that, so that's not what's our concern. So if I might quickly just reiterate, what I need is a motion. Oh, go ahead.
I've got one more.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir.
So you said you won't need this upper door on the east side.
No, that's gonna be a window.
So I would prefer to have nothing there. I mean, they're just.
That's fine. There'll be nothing
It's
there.
just too much.
Fine.
Too many windows on that one wall.
Yeah, I just think it would better with that.
Right, and I was back and forth about it, I didn't know, they put it in, and the framer, they frame $1 million houses up in Flagstaff, and they just were slamming it out, and when they popped in there, and it wasn't the right size, and I didn't know what to do with it, but thank you for choosing that for me. Easy.
Okay, so, are you ready for the motion?
Yes, I am.
I think I make a motion, I just need to look at this. The staircase